afternoon, everyone. Wonderful to have you all here. I love an end of the day session because you know it's people really dedicated to the subject. The sun is out, people are excited about work-based learning, so I'm excited to have you here. With some of our wonderful panelists who will impart all of their knowledge to you, and you'll go out to a cocktail reception so ready to talk about work-based learning. So I'm Julie Lammers, Senior Vice President of Advocacy and Corporate Social Responsibility for American Student Assistance. We are a national nonprofit focused on changing the way young people learn about career and then navigate a path to education and career success. So we are very excited to have this wonderful group of panelists with us today to talk about the issue of how we best engage employers in the process of work-based learning. So with us are Stephanie Reisner, President and CEO of GPS Education Partners, Corey Mohn, the President and CEO of the CAPS Network, Lydia Logan, Vice President of Global Education and Workforce Development, Corporate Social Responsibility for IBM, and Zaida. Yes, Zaida. I keep trying. Zaida, Olivia, from Executive Director of the Chica Project, which is a local organization in the greater Boston area. So we will hear more about these wonderful programs. ASA is really dedicated to the idea that every young person needs to leave high school with an opportunity to explore their career interests and interact with a career-connected learning experience. And so we do that through policy work and expanding opportunity for these experiences, funding opportunities directly, and working with partners to help scale the work that they're doing. I would love for you to just go down the line, maybe start with you, sure. Stephanie. Introduce yourself to the crowd, what GPS EDU does, and how you're trying to tackle this issue.
Sure, absolutely. So my first 16 years, I was actually VP of HR for Generac Power Systems. So I spent my first 16 years in industry, and we found that we had the same issues that we have today, which is basically, we had young people coming to our doorstep, ill-prepared for work, ill-prepared for, the skills that they needed, ill-prepared for life. And we were an organization that was growing. We were looking for what was, how were we going to really help young people get really into the opportunities that they needed. And so in 2000, we really went all in and flipped the classroom. And we developed a model that was really an employer-driven model, integrating the real world into the education through youth apprenticeship in Wisconsin. And that piece of what we do serves about 200 students, 45 schools, and about 100 employers. But about 5 years ago, we really felt that we need to engage young people at a deeper level and earlier in that pipeline. So we really built out a full work-based learning journey that connected that learning from the early awareness to that hands-on experiences, bringing that to the next post-secondary. And so now what we do is we really provide intermediary services to scale work-based learning with the goal that every student has the opportunity to experience having a work-based learning experience by the time that they graduate. And so we still run our Cornerstone program. It graduates about 200 students per year. We have over 2,000 students that have been through that very deep, meaningful experience. And the transformations are incredible that they go through. I mean, there's at graduation, there's not a dry eye in the house. But the next steps for this truly is taking that 20+ years of experience and saying, how do we help scale that? How do we help design, develop, and execute work-based learning at scale? And how do we help regional communities establish that and do that? And so that's really what we're trying to do now, is say we're going to take that expertise, we're going to help educators, we're going to help business and industry connect those dots and be able to meet the needs of all students throughout the country. So we're super excited about being able to do that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Corey, tell us a little bit of the CAPS network.
Yeah, well, I feel like I should just go down on the floor and pass the mic around. We've got what I call the UN of CAPS in the audience today, from Arkansas, Florida, Washington, Missouri, Iowa, Utah, Minnesota. I'm probably missing some, Missouri, Kansas. But CAPS, really I want to start with the why of CAPS. And the why is built into our tagline, our slogan, which is, we go where students lead. And it's really important for us to find ways to have the adults in supporting roles, but the students in leadership roles, where they can drive their own learning, what they're interested in, what they're passionate about, what they truly believe after getting a little bit of support around self-discovery. What is it that they're on the earth to do, right? How can they make a positive impact on the world? And that's really, really important. So how we do that is we leverage connections in the professional world to establish students as consultants to businesses, nonprofits, startups, and giving them the chance to work authentic client-connected projects, along with other methods, right? We all know about internships and apprenticeships and how important those things are. But the scalability aspect of having students be able to work on these projects from their learning space in tandem with connections to professionals is really important. And we know this works. We know that this is important and is guiding students, because we have the data that proves that out. And I'll just give one data point now, which is when students start in a CAPS program, about 1 in 8 of them think that they have a good understanding of what careers are out there for them. When they exit, it's 7 in 8. So think about those 8 kids standing at the front of the room. This matters. This work matters. It's not just about CAPS. It's about the movement around work-based learning and profession-based learning.
Thanks. Lydia.
Hi, so, excuse me, IBM, little company, been around for 111 years, working on technology. We, like all the other tech companies, have had, an issue trying to find all the talent we need. This isn't new. This has been going on for a while. 10 years ago, we started the P-Tech program. The P-Tech program is a pathways, a pathways model where students in high school do work-based learning. They earn higher ed credentials with a community college while they're earning their high school degree. That model has become very popular. It's now not only in the United States, but all over the world, but pathways in general are really what we're realizing students need as part of their high school experience. We took that, we've expanded, we have a new program called Skills Build. It's free, it's available to everyone. We have over 1,000 courses in 20 languages. Skillsbuild.org, go explore it, sign up, learn for free. But part of why we did that was to make sure that we could really get to scale. P-Tech students do get internships from us, but we wanted to make sure that students who were not P-Tech students had the opportunity to really explore careers, explore technology learning, explore, I think for any of you who were in this last panel, durable skills, and start to earn digital credentials. Because what we also know is they need to start thinking about and earning those credentials that are marketable, and to start helping them demonstrate what it is that they know and are able to do beyond just a high school degree. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's about creating a talent pipeline, diversifying the pipeline, creating economic opportunity, helping students understand what's available to them, and doing it at scale. But I think it's a systemic issue that we have. It's making sure that it's not just what IBM needs, it's what's good for individual students, it's what's good for society, and it's good for business. We have a limited number of entry-level jobs at IBM, so a lot of students, we have skills build opportunities available for high school students and teachers, college students and professors, and adult learners. They're not all coming to work at IBM, but they may want to go work somewhere else, or they may just be looking to gain skills. They may be looking to upskill or get, a promotion. But we need to make sure that people have access, they have it in a way that it's affordable, and that they can do it in a way and at a time that works for them. Mm-hmm. I think, our system has been designed for people to go to high school to college to work, and we know that that's not what most people do. And we believe that if you are on a college path and you earn some digital credentials while you're in your college pathway and you leave college, you shouldn't leave empty-handed. So you can at least leave with some credentials, and that you don't have to wait until you're in college to do that. You can start that journey in high school.
That's great. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But Zaida, talk a little bit about the Chica project. Explain to people what it is and how your model works.
Thank you. Zaida Ismatul Oliva, and serving as Executive Director of Chica Project. And we've been around since 2011, and interns and fellows have always been a fundamental to our organization and the growth. And what we have been able to do within the last 3 years is really scale this program up. And so we have a very comprehensive and holistic interns and fellows program that is extended to high school age students. And what's important about this program is, as nonprofits, we are businesses running like businesses, so students are getting real career-ready experiences in our finance department, in our development department, marketing and communications, programming, data, network. So they are joining these teams to really contribute to the growth and getting real work experience.
That's great. So let's start with maybe a question for both Lydia and for you, Stephanie. You are both, your programs were both created by businesses who saw that there was a fundamental challenge with the pipeline issue and didn't just say, okay, we're going to maybe talk to some education partners and hope they'll come up with a solution, but you actually went out and created a solution on your own. I think there is a lot of tension, between whether or not that is a role that business should have, right? They, at the end of the day, they're trying to operate a company, and maybe they are good at training employees, but maybe not a young person.
Maybe stay in your lane a little bit.
There's a lot of that conversation. To what level should a business be engaged? And I think there's also a lot of concern about the pressure put on businesses by the education system to solve this problem, right? I heard recently someone at the Department of Education said, trying to work with a school system is like being nibbled slowly to death by a goldfish, right? They just keep coming at you, and it's very frustrating, right? So from a business standpoint, how do you navigate that? Why do you believe that this is important for you as a company to do, not just to be a good citizen, but from a business perspective, what is the problem you're trying to solve?
You can't complain about it unless you're going to do something about it.
Right.
Exactly.
So we do work closely with school districts. We work closely with community colleges, with four-year institutions, with educators. We have educators on our teams. We are continuously upgrading. We have partners at our school systems, at our education organizations. We work with JFF. We work with TIES. We work with, right? So it's not all IBM just because it's IBM branded. We're not, our hubris is not that strong that we would expect to go it alone. We often say when you are faced with a large challenge, you need diversity of thought around the table. And we know that that's one reason why we need to diversify the pipeline of talent, but it's also why we have partners who really are experts in their field in the same way we know what we need, they know how to get it done. We are no longer a B2C company, so when we look at our CSR programs, we are not trying to be B2C. We have partners we work with who know the people they work with better than we could. Mm-hmm. What supports do they need? How do they want to learn? Where are they learning? What kind of other things need to be in place? So we are working very closely with partners to deliver those programs and to design them.
Yeah.
So I have something too that I can share out with people. We built basically a business case for work-based learning. And it's a little bit of a how to communicate from an educator perspective to a prospective employer or a community of employers to say, this is why work-based learning is so important, and this is why we need to connect. But I do think that employers, they are it's about time and money. So you do have to approach them, not nibble them right to death, but approach them as true partners and strategic partners at that, to say, what is the common problem we're trying to solve? And let's collectively get together and make sure, one, we are solving solving a community problem? And two, how do we do that together with some flexibility and making sure that we've got common goals and that there really is a return on investment, and that doesn't have to be a bad word, right? I think, businesses truly are creating a community of collaboration. I think that it doesn't have to be one-to-one, where it's one school to one employer, but instead one-to-many, where there is an opportunity for employers to have on-ramps and off-ramps, because different times in their cycles, they're all in, and other times they are all out. And you don't want them with your children at that point in time, right? So I do think it's developing that deeper partnership. And the other thing is, too, that I would recommend at this point is to say, find some champions within these businesses, because you will need to engage from the kind of executive level to HR to operations. All of those folks are stakeholders in the work that we do. But at the same time, there is going to be some champions, or at least one in there, that will be the person that will help carry that through, in good times and bad. So just some suggestions that I would make.
That's great.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I would
go
just
ahead.
plus one that yes, find your strong employer partners, but don't limit yourself to
No.
just one.
Absolutely.
Don't,
Absolutely.
because sometimes it's one person in the company who's the champion, and if they move
And
on
they
and you
leave,
lose that
right, right.
partnership, have a lot of eggs in your basket.
Yeah, absolutely.
You would never encourage students to apply to one college or one job. That's
Right.
not how we
Right.
run our lives. So don't have one employer partner. Have a coalition.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Corey, what is your value proposition to employers? It is a complicated network of employers that you've stood up, that you work with very closely. Explain a little bit how you make that work.
Yeah, so think of it as a menu of options. So when you approach a business partner, and here's the first thing I would say. We, as educators, often highly complicate and stress out over reaching out to an industry partner to engage with them. We somehow in our minds think we have to go to, everybody's got to be IBM, and it's going to have to be this really big thing, and we're going to have to sell them somehow, and we don't know how to talk to business partners very well because we've never left the school system, right? So it's all these things, this anxiety that's built up. So we talk about a menu of options and the idea of connecting in, back to the metaphor of the little bites, but it's think about small steps you can take. And then we talk often about the idea of finding the 10th thing on the to-do list, right? Every business, every community partner has a 10th thing on their list. They never get to it. That's a great project for high school students to work on, and that becomes a client-connected project. But what I would say to the value proposition, like why would an industry partner want to engage? Really, we've been told multiple times from multiple industry partners there are 4 reasons why they do. It's recruitment of the talent pipeline, which is to me is the obvious one. It's retention of their existing employees, which when I first heard that, I was taken aback. I'm like, what does that even mean? And it's this idea that in a larger organization, when you have a younger employee, they can often not see the connection of their work in the day to the meaningful bottom line of the company. But if they're able to represent their brand with young people, they're the person, they're the go-to. And that can actually keep them engaged in the mission of the company. The third is branding. And the fourth is actual return on investment. We have a number of projects I could point to through the CAPS program where students have created something of value that the employer has actually taken and implemented in their organization to make things better. The one that's kind of a dramatic example, but we had a program in Minnesota, had data analytics students work on a data set for Best Buy. They analyzed store data across the state, found anomalies at 3 stores. Turns out the executives at Best Buy looked into it. Those 3 store franchise branch managers had powered up all of the devices and did not shut anything down overnight. Ended up saving Best Buy $2 million a year. That's real impact. That's resume-worthy impact. So just an example on that. So there is.
And that was the 10th thing on their to-do list?
Yeah, right.
Should have been higher.
Okay, number
but it
1.
wasn't.
Yes, they'll check their to-do lists more closely going forward.
Exactly right.
Zaida, so your model, not only do you find opportunities for work-based learning for your program participants, but you do it yourself. So you have two different ways of approaching this. Why is that important to the young people that you work with, and how are those models really sort of working off of each other to drive impact?
Great, thank you. Not to sound cliche, but our youth are our future, so why wouldn't we want to invest in them? So for us, that's important that we are investing in them and that they find a rewarding career so that they go out and strong and have a great presence in the workforce is what we're creating. So that to us is very important. So we want to create those opportunities. And secondly, for us is we are a women of color-led organization, so it's important for our youth to see themselves and ourselves as leaders, and so that they're connecting with mentors that are invested in them as well, and that that they see the possibilities.
Yeah, that social capital piece is enormously important, and building opportunity for young people to build professional networks. Love to understand how your programs are focusing on that. Maybe I'll start with you since you just mentioned it, and I know it is a big component of the support systems that you create for the young people in Chica Project.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have a holistic internship program. So we actually this is not a transactional program where they're just, taking labor from them, but we have a paid internship program, so we're helping them, where it's important and we're valuing their work. We're also providing mentorship. We're providing goals and support. We are providing professional development opportunities, and we also provide professional development dollars for something that they're interested in. So we really are given a wraparound program, and it's not just, we are interested in supporting the whole student.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Lydia.
So for the students who come in to our IBM offices, and that gets trickier and trickier as remote work has happened. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about what work-based learning looks like now that companies are figuring out how to connect students to employees through projects and volunteer mentoring and things like that in a remote way. But we do still have students coming into IBM offices working on projects, doing multi-week paid internships, and they get a mentor and they get projects to work on, and they do online learning. They get exposed to and have access to the same learning platform that IBMers use. So they see the kind of learning that we have to do. We all have to do a minimum of 40 hours of learning a year, so they understand that we also have to keep learning to keep our jobs and to stay current on our skills and learn to stay curious.
Chat, GPT and all of those new
all of those things. All of those things. And for us, it's how does ChatGPT compare to Watson Assistant? Because we have our own, we have our own AI products. So we are all doing all of that learning, and our students who are coming in are learning those things along with their cohort, but also the mentors who are connected to them. We also work throughout the year with organizations like Career Village and Gadara, who are able to connect our IBM volunteers periodically to do things like resume reviews and other kinds of interactions with students. So there are lighter touch ways to make sure students get access, exposure, and connection. And I wouldn't write those off just because they may be 1 or 2 time interactions. I would think about it more like a layer cake and get students everything you can get them, because it's not always going to be the $22 paid 6-week internship. That's the holy grail. But
there are tiered experiences.
There are tiered experiences.
Yeah.
That's
you think we could get ChatGPT and Watson to compete on Jeopardy?
So that's
or
another
chess
department.
Match,
maybe.
It's another panel. So, Corey, to that issue of social capital and how you're helping young people understand the networks that they're developing and then better navigate those as they go out into the working world.
It's extremely important, and for any of you that aren't familiar with the work of Julia Freeland Fisher at Christensen Institute, you need to look her up. She has a book called Who You Know, which is incredibly insightful. Lots of data around the importance of social capital building in terms of closing the equity gap, right? Because we know inherently the power of who you know and how that helps you to advance. But if you are a student that is in a situation where it's a single parent household, or you have parents that are working around the clock, you may not have the same, I would say almost casual access to some of these networks. And yet, if you focus on that and you create models or are very intentional about connecting students, you can turn that around. We're actually working on a pilot program in the Kansas City area connected to Julia's work. She'll actually be kind of on the team with us, where we're going to go into the urban core in Kansas City and work with students, both with CAPS implementation, but with a front end that's a kind of a throughput around social capital, and making sure that students understand the importance of not only being connected, but cultivating those relationships over time. We actually measure in a student survey we do every semester, and our fine folks here in the CAPS network issue that through their local programs. But we had over 2,000 students this last semester take the survey, and what it told us, one of the things we asked was, has this program given you the potential to grow your social capital? Do you have a network you can rely on? And what I'll tell you is it's a two-sided story. One is there's incredible growth. Well, actually, three things. One, there's incredible growth. Two, it starts abysmally small. 1 in 8 students told us before the experience they felt like they had a network they could rely on professionally. That's incredibly tiny. It's kind of terrifying. There was good growth, but there's also potential to do more. So we got it from 1 in 8 to 5 in 8. Now we want to get it to 7 and 8. I mean, ultimately 8 and 8, right?
This is another reason why multiple employers in your partner pool is important.
Absolutely.
Because the more partners you have, the more opportunities you have to create and grow networks for your students.
But I think it's often easy for these experiences to become transactional and not understand that the ultimate goal is to build a relationship, build a network that you can then go back and access, right? And have multiple experiences in your lifetime that will grow that network.
And I think to that end, a lot of students don't even realize the relationships that they do have. And so, especially with a lot of the experiences that our students have, it's coming back to it saying, okay, you need to get in touch with that person. You need to make sure that you've got their information. You need to capture that somewhere. And so, with our students, they actually create a portfolio of network, right? That absolutely allows them to capture those things. We have, CEOs that these students are exposed to through fireside chats and through their supervisors and their mentors and the people that they're connecting with. And they take that casually sometimes. And what they're doing is building that network, but sometimes they need that help and that support to say, okay, I actually need to build that network somewhere digitally. And be able to then go back to that when necessary, or when I'm ready for kind of a next step, when I need to advocate for myself. I've got somebody that can advocate with me.
That's great. So I think in addition to sort of the value proposition to business, the challenge, there are many reasons for a business to say no, that I'm not going to partner with the schools, right? There are liability concerns. There are, management issues, pay issues. It's just very easy to say no, right? So how have you overcome some of those common barriers? Transportation is certainly an issue, which has become easier with virtual experiences being expanded during COVID, but it's not universal.
Right.
So how have you overcome?
So there's a couple, and one really very cool, transportation. So one of our business partners actually came up with this, and they said, we've got some retiring folks that don't want to retire, but they want to stay connected. And if you can go to one of the local dealerships, connect with a vehicle, we've got a driver. And so we've got a community project that's piloting right now that's saying, our local dealer was super excited about getting involved, understands the transportation, issues that young people are having. So this is a community, driven type of project. Everyone is super excited. And oh, by the way, the driver that is a retiree is the mentor for these students in the car when they have them in the car, right? So of course we needed to make sure that all of that was copacetic and it was all good. But what a wonderful thing, and you can scale it. I mean, you can do this in every area. It's not that every company's going to want to give up a few hours of one of their employees. But for the most part, there's employers that are willing to do a whole lot of things and support that kind of effort. So that's how we're taking care of one. The other thing I would say is we actually walk through employers that are interested in advancing work-based learning but don't exactly know how that is, same with schools. But from an employer perspective, we walk the floor or we walk their facilities with them to help open their eyes to not the risk but the opportunity. And they tend to underestimate young people quite a bit on what they're capable of doing. And also, we understand the local and federal rules and guidelines and everything else that we help connect that. So they need some expertise to give them reassurance and not risk. Lawyers love that, But we actually walk through and make sure that they understand the value that's coming out of that and the opportunities that they really can open up for these students to create more meaningful experiences as well.
Corey or Zaida?
I'm so distracted now because I'm going to be getting an Uber to the airport. And I'm going to want the Uber driver
to mentor you a little bit.
I want like the Uber Plus where I get the mentoring on my way to the airport.
Maybe by next conference.
Yeah, we need to work on that.
Yeah,
That's a great
yeah.
idea. Something that just keeps, over the last couple of questions, that keeps resonating in my head here that I think is really important to share is the power of developing programs that are locally empowered.
Yeah.
Even if you are trying to create a brand that spans a large geography, the importance of that ownership capacity at the local level. Mm-hmm. And part of it is I think you can overcome a lot of the situations and issues related to liability and transportation, specifically around the idea of a client-connected project, because you can take some of that issue of the student always being embedded at that industry location off the table where needed.
Right.
Where needed. Still powerful, but to be able to pull that back. But the other thing I would share is a story, and it's this idea of connecting across a network. Mm-hmm. How can you leverage what's worked in one place to help in another? And this story is, in fact, Mike Poor's in the audience here from Little Rock, Arkansas, and you know what story I'm probably about to tell here. So we're sitting in Bentonville. Mike was the superintendent in Bentonville, and we all know who sits in Bentonville, Arkansas. And it was this opportunity to engage Walmart in getting students connected in, high school students. But the idea of having them on campus was driving them crazy, right? Their legal team didn't like it, their operations team didn't like it. And I just happened to be down there and had a couple of those folks here, and Mike said, we need to try and figure out how to convince them to say yes. And just spur of the moment, I picked up the phone and I called one of our business partners from Kansas City, who's a VP at a global engineering firm. And thank God he answered the call. But I was like, hey, I don't know what you're doing right now, but if you have 10 minutes, I'd like to put you on speaker and talk to these folks at Walmart about how you overcame these challenges. And so this peer-to-peer sharing of like hearing it from someone in their seat to say, okay, I'm really nervous about this, and you telling me as the school person or you telling me as the community person isn't doing it for me. But when that attorney heard Clint on the phone saying, we had that same issue, here's how we resolved it, we've been doing this for 8 years, nothing has happened but great things. And suddenly I remember the line, because attorneys won't just say, yeah, we're doing this. The line was, I don't see any showstoppers. Do you remember this, Mike? I don't see any showstoppers. I'm like, that's the best we're going to get. But now there are students in Bentonville that show up every day to the Walmart Tech headquarters. They badge, they come in, they do amazing things there. And it's because, thankfully, one of our other partners had that conversation. So think about that when you're lifting up something locally, is how can you leverage others in similar positions to help move the needle?
Did you have something to add?
Yeah, sure. As an employer, we really have not focused on the barriers. We have focused on removing the barriers. And so therefore, we really are meeting youth where they are. And by doing this, we have a flexible work schedule. We have paid internships. We have a hybrid model. So now we have interns that our internships have expanded nationally. So we really are focusing on removing the barriers opposed to just focusing on them.
Yeah, that's great. Lydia, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing it so long, we talk to other companies about
Yep.
how to do it
Yep.
and how to get started
So
doing
call
it.
Lydia if you are looking to, to have a problem solved.
But you will get companies who are going to say, this is hard for us. And I would say, listen to them. Because you need to have a good experience, they need to have a good experience, or your students are going to have a terrible experience.
Yeah.
So it may take some convincing, but if they really are not in it, move to the next employer and find the ones who are willing to work with you. And that's the other reason why I was saying you want a few in your basket, because you do want those people who want to be a mentor, who want to have multiple engagements with kids. And you have to figure out, is it, once a month for an hour, whatever the cadence is, you want them to have someone over time who develops a relationship, right? The transactional things are fine, and everybody should have some of those, but if you really want to build the network, you're going to need to find people who have the time, whether it's a retiree, a younger employee who really is looking for meaning in their job in addition to the day job they have, or an older employee who has, the time to spend. But that may mean you're going to a handful of people in each company, but don't have the idea that it's a one and done. You may have to try to fit a few puzzle pieces together in order to get that right network for you.
It's great. So I know we're running up on time, but I'd love to understand your perspectives from an ed tech conference, ed tech crowd. If there are technologies that you think would help make this process better, or ones that you see that have sort of great hope for facilitating better relationships with employers or making the process work better, or is there just something that a dream product you would like come back next year and say, Stephanie, I solved that problem for you. Here is your ed tech solution.
Excellent. I would say it's so important to track and maintain and validate the work-based learning experiences. And
So from
for
a data
each,
perspective.
Yeah, from a data perspective, and for each student to have that and captivate that. So that creates more transparency for the employers, for the whole ecosystem of partnerships in that. And I don't know that we've figured out exactly how to do that effectively yet. I mean, there's the whole LER out there now that, how do we keep some of that with each of us? But I would say that would be a technology, adder that would really help connect that whole ecosystem and make sure that the tracking for those experiences are effective and validated and meaningful and better communicated to employers. The other technology that I see that we're even starting to use now is VR. So the preparation that we're able to give students early on before they get into some of those more highly technical type of roles gives employers more reassurance that there's a preparedness for those students, and the students themselves feel more confident going into those placements and going into those opportunities. And so I think that has a role in some of the work as well, and I'd like to see more of that advance and more accessibility to that for students.
Great.
A couple of names that organizations we're excited about. SkillsLine, for those of you that were in one of the previous sessions, and SkillsLine is now going to be a part of a really interesting and fun way for students to connect through the portal that you all have set up.
Yes,
in your kind of
Evolve
assistant-
Me.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And so that's exciting, and that's kind of understanding how to put language around skills and kind of train up around those durable skills. Another one is Stimuli Studios. So thinking about the metaverse and how you could actually break through equity challenges around tech, but give students a virtual experience around career exploration. We're super excited to see where that goes. But the thing, I think the thing that I would say is there's a reason, something that I think this is a noisy space, right? There's a lot of people in this space. There are a lot of people out selling. It can be difficult to navigate an event like this because of that. But the thing that we believe strongly in is we've got to be able to prove out when students get past all these experiences that it meant something. And a small snippet of somewhat breaking news is we actually released an alumni survey and got some data back from that. And the interesting thing is this kind of thing works. And we have over 1,000 respondents who are out, students that are now out in the college and career who are saying this kind of thing works. It matters, and so we need to lean into that. All of us do.
Yeah.
And I appreciate conveners that can coalesce. Like, there can be all these great products, but if we're lost in the noise, so the things like ASA is doing, kind of bringing this together and giving students a place where they can find this is super important. So appreciate that very much.
Great. Lydia.
Yeah, I think about the matching and the ability to do virtual mentoring, and it's out there. I think for companies, just be aware, depending on how conservative your lawyers are, will depend on whether they let you do that or not. So there's the, are your students over or under 18? So if they say no to virtual, don't, it's probably the lawyers telling them no, don't get upset.
Wonderful.
We're working on those kinds of things, but there are options out there, and I think a lot of them are good and worthy.
Yeah.
What I think is the technology that's not created yet. So if anyone's a coder or anything like that, but it's it's a platform where employers can come and be an informal platform where they can share the successes, the challenges that are happening with their internship fellowship program, so that they can create a community of thought partners. And I think something that, with their sharing, I think it's important.
That's great. Well, we'll leave it at that. We're at time now, so thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to my panelists.